at 10, a strange sighting is baffling.
He saw a string of strange lights zipping across the valley sky.
Spotted Bigfoot in Cleveland County, and this isn't the first time. The legend
City officials asked in a tweet, referring to it as a UAO.
Visited Point Pleasant, uncovering the legend behind the Mothman.
On a summer evening, Marlon was playing in his backyard when two massive birds swooped down out of the sky. One of the birds actually grabbed Marlon by his shirt and lifted him off the ground. His mother, Ruth Lowe, and several other adults witnessed the event. After about 30 feet, the bird dropped Marlon, and the two creatures flew off into the sky. Witnesses describe the birds as having a 10 to 15-foot wingspan and white rings around their necks, resembling condors or prehistoric raptors, rather than any known North American bird species. While being known as the Thunderbird, this event remains one of the few cryptid encounters with multiple eyewitnesses and significant media coverage. In this video, we'll go through different encounters of cryptids in the United States, investigating the roots of these creatures we came to know through stories and rare footages. Sandra Mancy and her fiancé were on a lakeside drive with her two children when they stopped at a quiet, undeveloped stretch of Lake Champlain for a picnic. The kids were playing near the shoreline when Sandra noticed something huge breaking the surface of the water about 150 feet offshore. It looked like a dinosaur, Sandra later said. The neck was long and arched, and the head was shaped almost like a horse's head, but reptilian. Startled, she grabbed her Kodak Instamatic camera and snapped a picture before fleeing with her family, fearing the creature might approach. They didn't think to retrieve coordinates or return for further investigation, but the photo she captured shows what appears to be a dark, long-necked creature rising out of the lake, a shape strikingly similar to depictions of the Loch Ness Monster. Later investigations suggest the area where the photo was taken is too shallow for a large animal, which skeptics point to, though some argue the shoreline may have changed. The creature was later named Champ by the locals after Lake Champlain, their own Nessie. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were horseback riding deep in the Six Rivers National Forest on an expedition to investigate local Bigfoot reports. They carried a 16mm camera just in case. Around 1 p.m., as they followed Bluff Creek, their horses suddenly spooked. Then, about 120 feet away, they saw something moving, the one they were looking for. A large human-like creature covered in dark, matted hair stood up from near the creek, glanced over its shoulder at them, and began walking briskly into the woods. To this day, despite decades of analysis, no one has definitively proven the Patterson-Gimlin footage a hoax. Costume experts are divided. The proportions, muscle movement, and gait are difficult to replicate, especially with 1960s materials. There are other footage of Bigfoot, but the most talked about and hard to debunk is still the Pattinson footage. Night draped itself over Point Pleasant like a heavy curtain as Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with their friends Steve and Mary Millette, took a late-night drive through the overgrown backroads of the TNT area, a maze of concrete igloos, rusted chain-link fences, and forgotten war relics. They laughed, not expecting anything but shadows and silence. But then, something moved. At the edge of the road, two glowing red eyes blinked open, high off the ground, too high for any animal. A massive shape detached from the shadows, a tall man-like figure with 10-foot wings folded tight against its back. It had no head, just eyes. The eyes were in its chest, Linda later said. The creature took a step forward, its movement strange, fluid, almost mechanical. Then the wings unfurled with a soundless snap, and it took to the air, chasing their car as they sped down Route 62, hitting over 100 miles per hour. But it kept up, gliding above them effortlessly, never flapping. They drove straight to the Mason County Police Station, pale and shaking. The sheriff, used to drunks and deer reports, could tell this was different. They were terrified. Within days, more sightings poured in. A creature landing on rooftops, blood-curdling shrieks in the woods, pet dogs disappearing, and men in black knocking on doors, warning witnesses to forget what they'd seen. The terror continued for 13 months, until December 15th, 1967, when the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. After that, the Mothman vanished. Mothman is often associated with tragedy because its appearances have eerily coincided with catastrophic events, leading many to believe it is a supernatural harbinger of doom. Another chilling example is when people working at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the days leading up to the April 26, 1986 disaster claimed to have seen a large winged creature with glowing red eyes, eerily similar to the Mothman described in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, 2 decades earlier. In 1735, Mother Leeds, already burdened with 12 children, discovered she was pregnant with a 13th. Frustrated and overwhelmed, she allegedly cursed the child in frustration, crying out, "Let it be the devil." On a stormy night, she gave birth to what seemed like a normal baby, until it transformed into a monstrous creature with wings, hooves, a goat's head, and a forked tail. Flew up the chimney, and vanished into the Pine Barrens, never to be caught. That's the origin of the Jersey Devil, but the escalation of the folklore took place in 1909, where in Bristol, Pennsylvania, a police officer claimed to see a creature with bat-like wings, hooves, and glowing eyes flying through the air. In Camden and Haddonfield, trolley cars were delayed as armed guards escorted frightened workers. A group of firefighters in West Collingswood tried to hose the creature down when it appeared near their station. The water did nothing, they claimed, and it screeched and flew away. Schools closed as parents kept their children home. Mills and factories shut down. Entire towns armed themselves with shotguns and torches, forming posses to hunt the beast. The Jersey Devil vanished as quickly as it came. No trace was ever found, but newspapers documented hundreds of reports, some by respected citizens, law enforcement, and clergy. Today, there are still sightings of the creature. Some even recorded their encounters on video, but still no actual evidence backing them up. Is the Jersey Devil from another dimension, and we just happen to take glimpses of it?
In the summer of 1973, 3 friends Ed, Dennis, and Joe set out for a hunting trip in Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. They were deep in an isolated spot called Dogfish Bay when a storm forced them to set up camp for the night. The wilderness there is no joke. Towering cliffs, dense forests, and fog that rolls in without warning. At night, the silence feels heavy, broken only by the distant crash of waves or the occasional snap of branches in the dark. On their second night, a storm pinned them down. They set up camp, lit a fire, and tried to sleep as rain hammered against the canvas of their tent. Then at 2 a.m., Ed was jolted awake by Dennis whispering, "Something's out there." The men listened. That's when they heard it, heavy, deliberate footsteps. Not the 4-beat shuffle of a bear, but the slow bipedal crunch of something walking upright. The sound circled their tent. Once, twice, then it stopped. They waited, hearts pounding, but the silence never broke. Whatever it was hadn't walked away, it had simply vanished. They even thought it was still out there waiting to ambush them. They made it through the night without incident, but still rattled on what they've heard. The next night, it returned. This time, all three men heard the steps. With rifle and flashlight in hand, they burst out of the tent, ready to confront their stalker. But the forest was still. Their light cut through nothing but rain and mist. No tracks, no animal, no answers. By morning, they decided not to push their luck. The hunt was over. They left Dogfish Bay behind, but none of them ever forgot the sound of those footsteps. Years later, Ed came across a decades-old Alaskan magazine. Inside, he found something chilling, an article about a village not far from where they had camped. The article told of disappearances, unexplained deaths, and an entire community that had abandoned its home in fear. The village's name was Portlock, Alaska, and apparently, they were lucky to survive that night. Portlock was founded in the early 1900s as a salmon cannery town. For a while, it thrived. There was a school, a church, even a post office. Children played along the rocky shoreline, and workers cut timber from the hills. On the surface, it was a picture-perfect Alaskan village, but underneath, something was wrong. Native Alutiiq elders had long warned about a creature known as Nantinak, a massive, hairy being that walked like a man, but was not human. The name meant something like, the ones who steal us. In their stories, Nantinak was not just an animal, but a powerful presence in the land, one that grew violent if disrespected. At first, settlers brushed off the warnings as superstition. But then the disappearances began. In 1905, just 5 years after the town was founded, workers started vanishing. Some were never seen again. Others washed up in the lagoon dismembered, torn apart in ways no bear attack could fully explain. Panic spread. Native workers fled, saying the place was cursed. In 1923, teenager Sergius Moonin claimed he saw the creature himself, a towering figure covered in hair, walking upright along the beach. It carried a large club-like stick. He wasn't alone, others reported the same. Not long after, hunters came back from the forest with wild tales of trees ripped from the ground and replanted upside-down roots clawing at the sky. Then came the death of Andrew Kamluck in 1931. His skull was crushed by an enormous piece of logging equipment, too heavy for any man to lift alone. Officially, no explanation was given. Unofficially, people whispered, Nantianak had struck again. Through the 1930s and 40s, disappearances piled up. Hunters, prospectors, and even entire logging crews went missing. Villagers spoke of huge 18-inch footprints in the mud, whistling calls echoing through the woods, and strange lights that danced across the sky. Some even claimed to see apparitions, ghostly women standing on the cliffs, or children playing by the docks who vanished if you approached. Portlock wasn't just plagued by a monster, it seemed haunted. In the summer of 1871, a group of loggers gathered around a fire deep in the pine forests of Wisconsin. After a long day's work, it was common for the men to pass the time swapping tales. Stories of close calls with falling trees, of wolves trailing the camps, or of accidents that nearly claimed a man's life. But that night, one story silenced the laughter. An older logger leaned forward, his face lit by the flames, and spoke of a creature the men called the Hidebehind. He told how it was never seen straight on, for no matter how quick a man spun around, it always slipped just out of sight, lurking directly behind his shoulder. At first, the others chuckled, but the man's tone grew serious. He recounted how strong lumberjacks had gone missing without a trace. Their axes and saws were often found left on the forest floor, but the men themselves were gone. The older logger swore that the Hidebehind hunted at night, waiting until a man was alone in the woods. He described the sound of snapping twigs, the slow rustle of brush, the unmistakable sense that eyes were watching from just beyond the firelight. And when it struck, he claimed, the creature let out a scream so piercing it froze its victim in place, before dragging him into the trees. The Hidebehind was just one of many strange stories told across the Old West, tales that still echo like modern cryptid encounters. While the forest had the unseen watcher that drags unsuspecting victims, the deserts had its own eerie cryptid stories that might sound familiar to a modern audience. In 1883, inside a dusty Arizona saloon, ranchers spoke of a towering man-like beast said to roam the sands at night. They called it the Desert Apeman. Before Bigfoot captured headlines, Arizona's deserts were already rumored to hide an ape-like beast. Cowboys, miners, and settlers called it the Desert Apeman, an enormous hairy figure that roamed the Mogollon Rim and remote canyons. One of the earliest written accounts dates back to 1903, when a newspaper described a group of prospectors encountering a hulking creature with long, shaggy hair and glowing eyes. The men claimed it threw stones at them from the cliffs before disappearing into the night. Some stories tie the Desert Apeman to native legends of wild men, while others suggest it could have been an escaped gorilla from traveling circuses that were common at the time. The Desert Apeman may be one of America's oldest cryptid legends still alive. After those encounters with the Desert Apeman, another mysterious creature is slowly gaining reputation in the Pacific Northwest in the early 1900s. The Gumberoo was first reported by lumberjacks in the Pacific Northwest, but the legend spread through frontier towns. Described as a massive bear-like creature with almost no fur and a tough black hide, it was said to be invulnerable to bullets. One logger in the late 1800s supposedly shot an entire magazine at the beast, only for the bullets to bounce off like pebbles on stone. Some stories went even further, claiming the Gumberoo's skin was rubbery and flammable. When struck by sparks, it would explode in a fiery blast. That sounds absurd today, but it made for a terrifying campfire story back then. To frontiersmen, the Gumberoo represented their greatest fear, a predator they couldn't fight back against. Imagine being deep in the forest in the 1800s with only a rifle, knowing it might do nothing against what's stalking you. Another desert-dwelling cryptid that cowboys from the Old West encountered is a creature known as the Cactus Cat. The name sounds goofy, sure, but when you're alone in the desert, its scream alone will leave you in terror. Described as a bobcat-like creature covered in thorny spikes with a spiked tail, it was said to slice open cacti at night, drinking the fermented juice. By the time cowboys saw it staggering across the desert, the creature was drunk and angry. One prospector claimed he heard the Cactus Cat's cries outside his cabin, long, wailing screeches that sounded almost human. When he stepped outside, he found strange slashes on the cacti nearby, but no footprints in the sand. Others believed the creature could survive without water for weeks, thanks to its cactus diet. The Cactus Cat might sound funny at first, but to a lone cowboy camping in the desert with strange cries echoing in the distance, it was no joke. Cryptids of the Old West weren't confined to the deserts or mountains. Some were even said to lurk in the waters. There are stories in the Old West about a creature that the early settlers called the Water Panther, a fearsome creature said to lurk in rivers and lakes across the Great Lakes region. The Water Panther comes from Anishinaabe legends, but spread quickly among settlers in the Midwest. Described as a giant underwater panther with horns, scales, and glowing eyes, it was believed to live in the Great Lakes and surrounding rivers. Indigenous tribes considered it a dangerous spirit of the deep, one that dragged the unwary into the water. Settlers in the 1800s reported strange movements in lakes that couldn't be explained. Giant wakes forming in still water, or animals vanishing near the shore. A Jesuit missionary in the 1600s even wrote that native guides refused to paddle near certain areas, convinced the water panther lurked below. By the time frontiersmen arrived, they had inherited the same fears. Some modern fishermen still claim to see shadows in the depths of Lake Superior, shapes too large to be fish. Now for the most infamous case of a cryptid in North America. Aside from the Bigfoot craze of the 1950s, actually began in the Old West in 1890. And this one is different because it covered a lot of ground in just a few seconds. Tales linked to it are some of the strangest in American folklore, and they all point to the same legendary beast, the Thunderbird. In April of 1890, the frontier town of Tombstone, Arizona, already famous for its gunfights and outlaw legends, became the stage for one of the strangest cryptid reports of the Old West. According to the tombstone epitaph, 2 ranchers riding through the desert stumbled across a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was described as an immense winged beast, with a wingspan stretching nearly 16 feet across. Instead of feathers, its hide was said to be smooth and leathery like a bat, and its head carried a long, gaping mouth that resembled an alligator's more than a bird's. The ranchers chased it down on horseback, firing round after round until the creature finally collapsed to the desert floor. Its size was so staggering that it supposedly took an entire wagon just to haul the carcass into town. Reports spread quickly, and some claimed a photograph was taken showing the men standing proudly beside the body. That supposed image, often called the Thunderbird photograph, has never surfaced, becoming one of the most enduring mysteries in American folklore. Many argue the story was either exaggerated or fabricated, but the tale of the Tombstone Thunderbird became part of Western legend. It's the point where ancient native stories of the Thunderbird collided with the dime novel spirit of the Old West, cementing the creature as more than myth. It became a frontier mystery still talked about today. What makes these tales so enduring is how they connect 2 worlds, the spiritual traditions of native peoples and the frontier imagination of settlers who faced vast landscapes they didn't fully understand. In an age without modern science or instant communication, every strange sound in the woods, every set of unexplained tracks in the mud, became the seed for stories that still echo more than a century later. Whether you believe these creatures ever existed, or see them as symbols of the untamed wilderness, one thing is certain. The legends of the Old West's cryptids refuse to disappear. They remain woven into the identity of the frontier itself, reminders that even in the most explored lands, mystery still lurks just out of sight. On June 14, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin was playing hide-and-seek with his brother and 2 other boys in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It was Father's Day weekend, and families gathered at Spence Field to enjoy the sunny afternoon. The boys decided to play a prank on the adults. They split up to hide behind bushes and trees, planning to jump out and scare them all at once. Dennis chose his hiding spot behind a bush just a few feet away. But when the other boys jumped out, Dennis never reappeared. Within seconds, his father, William Martin, realized something was wrong. He sprinted down the trail for nearly 2 miles, shouting Dennis's name, while others scoured the field and surrounding forest. But Dennis was simply gone. Over the next few days, the search became one of the largest in national park history. More than 1,400 people joined. Park rangers, volunteers, National Guard, and even Green Berets. They covered a 56-square-mile area with helicopters, dogs, and tracking experts. But heavy rainfall that first night washed away any footprints or scent trails. It was as if the forest itself swallowed Dennis whole. Then came a chilling report. About 5 miles away, the Key family hiking on Rowan's Creek Trail heard an enormous, sickening scream. Moments later, they saw a rough-looking man with unkempt hair darting through the trees, carrying something over his shoulder. It was the same time as the disappearance of Dennis. By the time this information reached authorities, days had passed, and the man was never identified. Over 50 years later, not a single shred of Dennis's clothing or remains has ever been found. How could a 6-year-old boy disappear within seconds, with 1,400 people unable to find even a trace? While Dennis has simply vanished near his family, the next person managed to send his grandmother one last picture before going missing. In 2015, an 18-year-old boy named Daylenn Pua hiked a forbidden path. There's a trail in Hawaii so dangerous and restricted, it's been officially closed for over 20 years. Something went horribly wrong that day to Daylenn, and this is the last photo he sent to his grandmother before he vanished. Despite being off limits and patrolled by security, the stairway to heaven had become a magnet for thrill seekers. The Haiku Stairs climb is nearly 4,000 steps along razor-thin ridges, with near vertical drops on either side. Slips can be fatal, and the mist can erase your sense of direction in seconds. The last image taken by Daylenn before he disappeared was reportedly from the trail, but without enough visible background to clearly determine where exactly he was. That makes it hard for authorities or search teams to trace his last known location. Some online users claim that if you zoom in closely on the photo, a shadowy figure or a blurry silhouette may be visible in the background or tree line. While this has never been confirmed, it's fueled conspiracy theories that Daylenn may have been followed or not alone. But despite covering the trail and surrounding valleys, they found nothing. No body, no gear, no signs of a fall, nothing. To this day, the disappearance of Daylenn is still a cold case with no resolution.